Welcome, everybody, to the next episode here, part of the Eon Network podcast. I cannot wait for tonight's episode. It's actually going to be a little dark, and it's going to be controversial. Before we get to that, though, of course, I'm Adrian, alongside with my broadcast colleague of mine who joins me every single week for Eon Network. T is here with me today. Welcome, T.
Hey, welcome, guys. Yes, it's your boy, Broken World Tea Time, and I'm back here with Adrian. I can't wait to do this topic today, Adrian.
Yeah, this is a very controversial topic for all of you who do not know. There was a WWE wrestler by the name of Chris Benoit. Now, Chris Benoit is a controversial figure in the wrestling industry, and the reason behind that is because before we get to that, let's go ahead and explain to the audience the history of Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit was a very, very great technical wrestler. He was wrestling all over the world. He wrestled from Japan, and then he went into the States and entered into the WWE at one point in time. Actually became one of the greatest technical wrestlers ever. You used to see Chris Benoit battle and wrestle, and you were a fan of the guy.
Back in, so I never seen WCW, but I've known of Chris Benoit because of ECW, right? Chris Benoit was sold in WCW, ECW, and then coming to WWE, part of the faction called the Radicals. Now, why I said Radicals because Eddie Guerrero was part of the Radicals, and Eddie Guerrero was best friends with Chris Benoit. Now, let's dive in a little bit more because Eddie and Chris Benoit was very, very close, going on the road together. And ever since Eddie Guerrero had passed away, that took a very toll on Chris Benoit. That hurt him. And he took it very hard as everybody else did, but he took it he took his life and his wife and his son's life as well, and that was very, very. I don't understand.
Yeah, it shook the wrestling industry, correct? I mean, literally, it was just probably one of the most awful things ever. On the night of June 22nd, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Benoit actually was able to kill not only his son, but also his own wife, Nancy, after many years being with her, and then ultimately being able to kill himself. Chris Benoit, again, a controversial figure because of the fact that he not only killed himself, but also killed his wife and his own son, his flesh and blood. Now, it begs the question, which is exactly what this entire podcast is all about. Should Chris Benoit should he actually be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? And there are a lot of people out there who believe he should be because of the fact that he was one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. And here's my answer straight up. Absolutely not. Do not put Chris Benoit into the Hall of Fame. I understand Chris Benoit is was a great technical wrestler. I understand that he had great work ethic, that a lot of people liked him behind the scenes, that he was a respectful man and so forth. I understand that. But you cannot, and I mean cannot, condone the killings and the fact that he killed his own son, then his own wife. How can you actually look past that and induct Chris Benoit into the Hall of Fame?
You know what makes me even sick to my stomach, Adrian, is that people are still. I'm not saying the WWE people are doing this, but you got fans out there of Chris Benoit that is creating him in the wrestling games like WWE 2K24, 2K23. People are still creating, trying to create Chris Benoit, and it's very disturbing to me and of course others that don't really want Chris Benoit in the game. WWE canceled him in all WWE for a reason. There's a reason why he's not in the WWE games.
And not just that, but also part of the the Peacocks and so forth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're watching Peacock and you want to watch, I think it was WrestleMania 20, the main event at WrestleMania 20. It was Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chris Benoit. On Peacock, it just says Shawn Michaels faces Triple H for the championship at the main event of WrestleMania. It does not include Chris Benoit's name. And I think that's a smart move to try to really erase Chris Benoit from history because we would really be promoting the guy if you think about it. I mean, it's almost as if they'd be going, well, sure, he killed his wife and son then himself, but we still got to honor him for being one of the best wrestlers. Absolutely not. No matter what it is, murder is inexcusable, and murder is obviously the damnedest thing anybody can ever do. And if you commit to that, which is what Chris Benoit did, then you should be erased. And what made it even worse is that Chris Benoit killed his own wife and his own son. His son was what, 6, 7 years old?
Six, six, and
Oh,
the sad thing about it is he had a dream. His son had a dream that he wanted to be a wrestler like his own father. So yeah, that's even more sad, right? Because
yeah.
y- you hear like his son wants to be a WWE superstar, want to be champions like his dad, travel the world and all that stuff. He don't get to do that now because of what his father did to him. And it's sad. Now, people are
Hmm.
gonna find me saying I'm hypocritical, and why will they say I'm hypocritical? It's because um with the China situation, right? Because China was had did adult entertainment in WWE, and of course they released her and fired her for that. But she's in the Hall of Fame, so people are going to say I'm hypocritical because I wanted China and she's in the Hall of Fame. But here's the thing: China did not kill anyone. China did not murder anyone. All she did was make some adult film. All she did, like,
Right.
and the same thing with Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was he took steroids. Right, that's all he did. That was a mistake. He passed away by mistake. But that's all he did was take steroids, and he's in the Hall of Fame. He did not kill Vicky. He did not kill his daughters. You know, but he's in the fame. People love Eddie Guerrero, and
Right.
love people at that time loved Chris Benoit. We all loved
Yeah.
Chris Benoit. But the fact that he took his son, his wife, and himself out is how can you respect a guy like that?
You mentioned China, you mentioned Eddie Guerrero, and I remember. First off, I remember the news when the news broke out for Eddie Guerrero. I mean, I was actually shocked. I remember I was a little kid and I was playing my wrestling video games at the time, and I remember my parents, who are not WWE fans, but they knew I was a huge wrestling fan, and they came in and they said Chris Benoit died, and immediately I got up and I went to see the television screen, and it showed it. Sorry, not Chris Benoit, excuse me. Eddie Guerrero died. So immediately I was able to see the TV, and it showed Eddie Guerrero did indeed die. I remember that as if it was yesterday. But you're right, Eddie Guerrero died, but no one else did. He didn't hurt anybody, he didn't actually kill anybody. At the end of the day, when push comes to shove, Eddie did not harm anyone. And the fact is, Eddie Guerrero is in the Hall of Fame because he did indeed care for people. He was not going to hurt anyone else. Of course, at the end, he did harm himself, but of course, Eddie being a lovable guy that everyone said he was. And of course, it was incredible to see him wrestle every week on SmackDown and Raw. You can tell that he was a great guy. And then also for China, too. I mean, I didn't know much about China. China was more so into the Attitude Era, so I didn't really get to see much of China. I understand that she did do some adult film, of course, after the WWE, but she was able to not harm anyone else. The day she died, she didn't harm anyone, and therefore the WWE took it upon themselves to induct China into the Hall of Fame. But Chris Benoit is a whole different story. I mean, Chris Benoit, that man. Listen, I'm gonna take a line from what Paul Heyman said at one point. 3 people died that night. 2 of them did not have a choice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with Paul Heyman. I mean, look, say what you say. People are gonna say what they say about Chris Benoit. Like they're gonna say that he should be in the Hall of Fame. They say that he like because of his great credits that he have done in ECW and his technical wrestling skills and stuff. Yes, I'm not going to take
Mm-hmm.
that away from Chris Benoit, right? I can't take that away from Chris Benoit because yes, he was those things. He was the greatest wrestler in WWE. Um, but at the same time, people need to understand that that's all taken away because of what he's done. That, like, it's like saying if The Rock was to um, take out Ava, his daughter Simone Johnson,
Hmm.
you know, and himself, Uh, I, and I'm one of the Rock's biggest fans. How would I feel if The Rock did that to his daughter and himself? I would be feeling the same way that I'm feeling right now about Chris Benoit. I will say, I'm sorry, Rock, but I can't support you anymore. And that's how I feel
Right.
about Chris Benoit.
And if anybody had any human decency, they would indeed feel the same way for anybody who actually ends up killing their own family, let alone their own son and their own wife. Now, I remember the news of Eddie Guerrero, but I also would like to put in that I do remember the news of Chris Benoit. I also was just minding my own business, if I'm not mistaken. I remember I was in the, enjoying summer break, and then all of a sudden, just watching TV, and uh, I saw the news that Chris Benoit passed away. Completely shocked because it was not that long ago at that time that we lost Eddie Guerrero. Now, of course, 2 years later, it was Chris Benoit. So, I was watching the news, and I remember that same night or the night after for Monday Night Raw, they canceled the entire show so they can actually pay tribute to Chris Benoit. And my oh my, that backfired completely, which we'll get to in a minute. But I would like to actually get your perspective, your story, your anecdote. Do you remember the day that you heard that Chris Benoit died?
Oh, of course, because the week before, you know, Vince McMahon had was doing this skit, right? If you remember correctly, it was the bounty um storyline with Vince McMahon. Whoever collects the bounty, um, you know, gets to destroy Vince McMahon and all that stuff, right? And Vince McMahon exploded in that limo, you know,
Right.
that night before. Um, but that story got scrapped. And on Monday Night Raw, um, he said that Chris Benoit had passed away. No audience, all the wrestlers were there because as we all go, the show must go on. Um, that's the saying. The show must go on. But yeah, I've heard the news with Vince McMahon, like at the start of Monday Night Raw, before the show started. I saw it like on the WWE.com, and they put their news on their webpage. That's when I found out that Vince McMahon had passed away. Is when I was on WWE.com. I saw it because they always put their news right there, and that's when I saw it.
It was very shocking because I remember at first, as we were watching the Monday Night Raw, tribute show for Chris Benoit, everybody was giving their tribute to Chris Benoit, and everybody thought initially that it was just a murder, that some senseless man came into their homes and murdered three of them. However, it was 24 hours later, that's whenever the news broke out, that it was not indeed a murder from another man, but it was a murder that was actually at the hands of Chris Benoit himself, who killed his own wife and son. And I remember that week, ECW, before the show started, Vince McMahon made the announcements that because of what happened, they were no longer going to be mentioning Chris Benoit's name anymore in the WWE. And that right there is what officially cemented the legacy of Chris Benoit. He'll forever be known as the guy that killed his own wife and son, and he is now completely erased from the WWE. And think about this for a second, because all that hard work that he put in, and it just completely went downhill within a snap of a finger, and he deserved it. He honestly deserved to never be mentioned after the brutal slayings that he did a part of the family. Now let's talk about this, however. A lot of people say that Chris Benoit was officially losing it after Eddie Guerrero's death, but a lot of people blame that it was not Eddie Guerrero's death. It was actually more so the steroids that he was taking. I believe it was a mix of both. I think Eddie Guerrero, who was really close to Chris Benoit, when Eddie Guerrero passed away, a lot of people said that Chris Benoit was really on the brink of just lunacy, so to speak. He was really getting out of control. And also the fact that he was taking steroids. That definitely comes into play. And when they actually did the autopsy for Chris Benoit, it shows that he had the brain of an 80-plus-year-old man with dementia. Apparently, there were a lot of holes on Chris Benoit's brain, and the reason behind that also was because of chair shots. He would always ask the wrestlers to give them legitimate chair shots, right? In WWE, you have to protect the wrestlers. That's why it says everyone says it's fake. well, it's not that it's fake, but you have to protect the wrestlers. You can't really hit them. But Chris Benoit would actually always tell them, hit me as hard as you can with the steel chair. So they would do it. And he really was damaging his own brain. So it was a mix of all of that. Would you agree?
You said everything right because Chris Benoit really took wrestling seriously. He wants you to take it seriously. He wanted you to, um, fight as if you're in a real fight. Is what Chris Benoit was all about. Um, and yeah, he took a lot of bumps and a lot of chair shots to the head and all that stuff. And I agree that he was messed up in the head. I agree that he did take too much steroids. I mean, remember Vince McMahon? It was documented in his documentary that Vince McMahon was giving steroids to his wrestlers in the back. I mean, why do you think Hulk Hogan got so bulked up? He was using
Right.
steroids and all that. So um, I think that now I don't want to blame too much on Vince McMahon, even though that is his company, was his company. Um, and we can do another podcast for that if you want for Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, yeah, I think the steroids is what really um did Chris Benoit in because he was using too much. He was using too much steroids and too much of that can and will kill you.
And that's what the story goes according to the documentary that was sent through the years, and many people saw it that Vince McMahon would definitely encourage his own wrestlers to take steroids because that's what Vince McMahon wanted. He wanted his company to really be larger than life men. He wanted these guys to be big superstars, like the Hulk Hogan, who by the way was really ripped, and also the big guys like Big Show and Kane and The Undertaker, The Rock and Stone Cold. These guys were huge, whereas Chris Benoit, he actually didn't really meet the standards of what Mr. McMahon or Vince McMahon really saw in a superstar. So, of course, Chris Benoit was given steroids and he started doing them and he started doing them.
Yeah.
And that's what probably drove him mad too, because he had the desire, he was driven in making sure that he was going to actually make sure that he was going to become the next WWE top dog. But the problem is, obviously, it took a toll, and at what cost? The cost of not only his own life, but also the cost of his own wife's and his own son's life. And it's always just sad, even years later, literally, even years later, what is it? 18 years later, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
The fact that 18 years later, and this still is a topic that is talked up a lot amongst the WWE fans.
And it's good to
yeah.
talk about this because we're in February, so we got 2 months away from the Hall of Fame. So this is the time where we talk about who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, what's going to take place, who's about the Hall of Fame, and every year Chris Benoit is being mentioned by the fans, by the WWE fans.
Oh yeah.
On Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, people are constantly sending pictures and saying he should be in the Hall of Fame and da 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 da.
Right. Yep.
That's like, no, he should not be in the Hall of Fame. I understand where you're coming from because of his skills and stuff, but you have kids watching the product, and the kid, if you are going to put him in a Hall of Fame and kids are watching, the kids are going to say, "Oh, so you guys going to have a murderer in the Hall of Fame? We going to accept murderers? No, we don't accept murderers. We don't accept murderers in WWE, and that's why they should not put him in the Hall of Fame."
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's already bad enough with Donald Trump, that creep, into the Hall of Fame. We certainly don't want murderers a part of it.
I don't know how he got in the Hall of Fame. I really don't know how he got in the Hall of Fame.
But listen, back to Chris Benoit. We're about to wrap things up. I mean, Listen, I mean, to each their own. I mean, if you truly believe that Chris Benoit should be added into the Hall of Fame, I mean, for anybody who's watching the podcast, if you truly disagree with us, you're more than welcome to, and you can definitely let us know below in the comment section, and of course, make your own case why you believe Chris Benoit should be into the Hall of Fame. Now, me and T definitely have the same opinion. Do not have Chris Benoit into the Hall of Fame, and furthermore, stop even fighting for the guy. Stop fighting for a chance for the Chris Benoit, that is, to be into the Hall of Fame, for him to be added into the Hall of Fame. I mean, come on now. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you want to admire Chris Benoit for his work, that's a different story, I suppose. But to look past the murders and to just say, yeah, he should be added into the Hall of Fame, Chris Benoit's amazing and so forth. Enough, please, enough. The guy's a murderer, no matter what it is, no matter how he is the greatest technical wrestler. You can name all these things about Chris Benoit. There's one title he has, though, at the top of the list: murderer. And that right there, again, can never be outshined, and that right there can never be condoned. Chris Benoit, again, to confirm it, should not indeed be into the Hall of Fame. T, do you have any final comments?
I just gotta say to all the people, for people that plays WWE 2K, I better not see Chris Benoit being created in 2K25, but most likely I will. So that's
Sickening.
People,
absolutely sickening.
Yeah. It's just,
nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, it's
sad.
very much sad, but never, of course. And I would like to again thank everybody for watching the episode here tonight. For T, I'm Adrian Matt, and if you truly believe that Chris Benoit should be added into the Hall of Fame, you're more than welcome to let us know below in the comment section. Of course, we digress. We thank you for joining us. We cannot wait. It's going to be incredible over the next couple of weeks. We got a plethora of different subjects that we're going to be tackling down here in the next couple of weeks, and really heading into the months of March and April. It's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to tackle these. We'll talk about these great subjects at hand. But T, I guess there's only one way for you to sign us out.
We're on the road to WrestleMania, and you guys know, stay huge.